This is Phantom Electric Ghost, and we're live on the air for the first time with Heather Forrester. Welcome to the Phantom Electric Ghost podcast.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's great to have new people on all the time. And before we go into the interview, I wanted to let people know we are a featured podcast on the Newsly platform. You can see that icon on the top says listen on Newsly. This podcast will be on the Newsly platform as an audio podcast later tonight. So use coupon code GHOST and get 1 month free premium subscription. Thank you for attending our show today. It's great to talk to different people from all over the world. This is actually going to be episode 930 of the podcast. We've been tracking that on Apple Podcasts since 2016. And what we're going to talk about today is mastering soul-aligned self-discipline. And so you can kind of take it away however you want to start with that topic.
Okay, cool. So my name is Heather, and I am a manifestation business strategist and intuitive healer. So part of my journey getting here has required me to build a really high level of self-discipline. And the only way I've been able to do that is through this concept that I feel resonates with being soul aligned to the discipline that I've created. And I find that that's really, for me and for my experience and even my clients that I work with, I find that unless you are aligned and you feel aligned within your soul to do what you're doing, it's going to be really hard to create that discipline or to maintain the discipline. And so today, we're talking about this a little bit. So I've got some tips and tools that I use and that I share with my clients to kind of help you create that soul aligned self-discipline. So, and it doesn't have to be perfect. Again, you want it to be soul aligned. So everyone's journey is going to be unique. It's going to be different. And there's going to be different phases and processes to it. So one of the first things I want to say is as long as you are making an effort to do at least 1% towards whatever you're working towards every day, that is still progress. And those little things that you do every single day will add up to make those big changes along the way. So what that means is, sorry, I'm getting a little bit interrupted here, but so hold on just 1 second. Okay. I can't do it. I'm sorry. I do apologize for that. Like I said, it's kind of late here, so I've got a little bit going on. So, and I'm so sorry that I lost my train of thought. So the first thing is, like I said, just making progress. That 1% every day, you're going to move closer and closer to where you want to be. So, and then what's going to help you do that is number one, goals and mission, knowing what your goals are, knowing what your mission is, and allowing yourself to figure out what that future self looks like. Right. So who do you want to become? And then what is that vision, right? Getting extreme clarity on that is going to be really helpful because it can be really hard if you just set a goal to say, hey, I want to wake up early in the morning, right? But you don't know why or what for or what the benefit's going to be. So like it can be extremely hard to just get things done or change your habits if you don't have a purpose or a clarity on what the end result might be at the end of that. So it's really important to have all of this clarity and to have an idea of where your trajectory is going to be taking you. So the goals and mission in your future self, because this is going to also help you with that instant gratification, right? Like we want that instant gratification. So we've got to kind of think like when we are working towards a goal, whether it's making a career change or building a business or starting something new or weight loss or looking for your soulmate. It really doesn't matter what you do. Everything's going to look a little bit differently, but you still need a little bit of discipline and you need a little bit of clarity in the process of how you're going to show up and what you want it to look like so that you can get exactly what you want. And like I said, I'm a manifestation strategist, so I work a lot with the law of attraction, right? And so the law of attraction states like you have to have that clarity. You have to know what you want in order for you to be able to get it. So with that being said, What I was saying about the instant gratification and knowing that future self, essentially what you're going to want to be able to do is you're going to want to be able to think, what would my future self do? So like when I set goals, like, and I make decisions, right? You have to make little decisions all day, every day. So like, let's say the goal is weight loss, for example. You might want to make decisions every morning or every afternoon when you've decided you're going to work out, right? So it's like, do I feel like it, right? How can you motivate yourself? And what I found, scientifically speaking, what proves to allow you to build that motivation the easiest is, like I said, if you're aligned to what you're working towards. And then number two, if you can be very clear on that future self and where you're going, then, and you get excited about like where you're headed and you're like excited to create that experience. If you think about it and you're aligned to it, then what happens is you're going to get a dopamine hit every single time you think of that future self. And then that mission, that goal, that clarity is going to just be like, I'm excited to work out, or I'm excited to follow my eating lifestyle, right? Like for me, I'm an intuitive eater. So like I like to eat by the sun, right? So like I crave that. I enjoy that. So with that being said, the instant gratification gets kind of solved in that manner, if that makes sense, is whenever you are clear, you're aligned to the vision that you're going for, and then you start to just think about it and focus on it as much as you possibly can. Do you have any questions about the first one, or do you want me to keep going?
No, it makes sense. I mean, because I'm an artist, I'm a producer, so I'm a creative type of person. And so what I've always done is, artists can get into this thing where they get into a rut and they can't think of anything to do, where they lose inspiration, and then they lose their output and they don't have a vision. But what I've done is like I put my music. I'm a bedroom producer, so all my synthesizers are right behind me. They're in my room.
Yeah.
So what I do is I made it so it's very easy for me to create. So it's
Right.
always there. And then I
Right.
practice. And so what I did, there's nothing wrong with just putting things down. And then the way the world is today, you can put it out on all these platforms. And so then I just started to do live rehearsals. And then that drew a bunch of people in. And that's how I became a podcaster, because when I kind of had this idea is if I show up, if I put something out there, things come to me like the law of attraction. And then I ended up going from just being a music producer to being a podcaster. And that wasn't even my original intention. But being out here as a podcaster helps my brand as a musician and producer. And so because it puts me out in the world. And so what I
Right.
found is like sometimes you find things just by showing up, you bring ideas out there by manifesting your ideas and not
Right.
holding them inside. Like
Right.
I know a
And
lot of
that's and
artists.
that's a good point. I like that you bring that up, because that's another point that I like to make, that it's part of the process of creating the soul aligned discipline, but it's something that helps it. It's what you're saying. And it's like you may not know the full way, and that's okay. I don't think we're supposed to. You know what I'm saying? Like you might have really big dreams. You might want to be a billionaire, or you might want to do X, Y, and Z. And these are huge, right? Especially if you're broke. If you're starting at zero or something like that, and you want to become a billionaire, right? One of the richest people in the world, then that's a pretty big gap to fill. And so you're not going to have clarity on the entire path that's going to get you there. So the best thing you can do is just start. Have that vision, of course, but know where you kind of need to start. Like, okay, well, what's a more realistic goal? Like for me, I know I have to follow my nervous system. So it's like, okay, well, where am I at? Right. So it's like, realistically, nobody's probably making $0 a month. Right. So, like, if we're making $3,000 a month, what realistically feels achievable, right? Maybe $10,000 is the next thing that you can work towards, right? And then you just work your way up. So then you start hitting 10K. Okay, now we're moving to 20K. Now we're moving to 50, whatever, right? Like whatever we got to do to reach that ultimate goal. But it might take some years, and you got to be okay with that. And you also have to be okay with the fact that you're not going to know the next step until you master step one. And so that's part of it too, is that with the goals and the vision is just knowing what step one is, knowing what like I need to do today to get me to who I want to be tomorrow, and just being content, be there, be grateful for the journey, be grateful for the process. And then another thing that I find that creates a lot of success for me is, because this used to kind of get under my skin when I became a coach. I would have these like business coaches like reaching out to me and they're like, oh, you could be making $10,000 tomorrow. You just need to charge $10,000 for your package. And I'm just sitting here like, I'm not comfortable
But
with
that's
that.
how they're making 10,000. That's how they make they make 10,000.
Well, I mean, I know that's how they make 10,000, and I get it. I get it. And it's not that I don't believe that I will one day be charging $10,000 for my services. You know what I'm saying? It's not that I don't have that belief, but I was a brand new coach. I wasn't comfortable with that. Like, I didn't believe that that was possible. Like, I didn't have the internal or the external confidence. And it's not, and again, I felt like it was just realistic. It was like, that's not where I want to be. Like, I don't feel comfortable. Like, I'm happy that I'm kind of new and learning and like, and I know, and I just had this knowing, like, when I'm comfortable, I'll continue to raise my prices. And that's exactly what's happened. They double and they double and they double and they just keep going. The more in demand my services become. But when I was new and I was kind of like trying to get people to understand who I am and what I'm doing, I didn't have that, level of
Yeah.
like, I'm going to do this or whatever. So I don't know if they were just chasing the wrong audience, but it didn't feel right to me. So like part of my success is just being okay with the fact that it's going to take time. And, whether it's weight loss or making XYZ money, it doesn't, or whatever, or becoming, or like healing trauma, because that's kind of like my roots as a coach is like, I was a trauma coach for a while before I was a manifestation strategist. So that's just kind of what it evolved to, because what I found was when I healed my trauma, I became like this awesome manifester, because what trauma is not what defines you, but it creates your limitations, if that makes sense. So it's going to create your doubts. It's going to create your insecurities. It's going to create that low self-esteem. It's going to create that fear, right? And that all of that fear, doubt, overwhelm, that anxiety, the worry, all of that, it stems from some sort of trauma, whether you realize it or not. And that's okay. But that's what is happening. It's like, because trauma can be so minute. Your parents arguing as a kid could cause some sort of internal decision that you make about yourself. And now you've got a limitation that you're going to have to work through. And you might not. And that's the tricky thing about those limitations and those fears. Sometimes they can be hard to identify, and sometimes like you might think consciously that you feel like you believe in yourself or like you can do anything, but subconsciously there's just a little bit of something in there telling you can't. And that's why it can be really beneficial to have a mentor, because what I know is sometimes like I don't even know when I'm getting in my own way, so like when I go to my mentors and I'll like just start talking about like what's going on in my life, they'll hear it. They'll be like, did you hear what you just said? I'm like, no, what did I say? You know what I mean? And so like, then they call me out on the limitation that I just expressed. But anyways, that's a little like side note. But that focusing on, so the next thing is, well, that's kind of actually flowing into what I was going to say next is those limitations. You've got to become friends with the limitations. So the next thing, once you get good at identifying those limitations, because guess what? The other thing that the limitations will do, it will create self-sabotage, because it's the thing that is like, I'll do it tomorrow. Or what if Sally, my Aunt Sally, doesn't accept me for my career change, right? Like, so it's limiting us. It's telling us we're going to sacrifice something. It's the illusion that's telling us why we can't, what we're going to have to sacrifice, what's going to get in the way. And those are all limitations. So the only way through them is to face them. So there's a quote from Rumi. He says, the pain is the solution to the pain is in the pain. So I always say the solution to the problem is in the problem. If you can be honest, just radically honest about like, what is the problem, right? Like, what is the challenge? What is holding you back? Like and I think the easiest way for me to identify it, like when I'm on my own, is to ask myself, why is this scaring me? What scares the hell out of me about being a billionaire? What scares the hell out of me about reaching my goals, right? Like whatever the goal is, right? What's really scary about, like, so a good example of this is like, if you're working on yourself and you want to and like you're a romantic, right? But you've been burned and now you're single, you've done a lot of self-work, but now you're ready to like put yourself back out there and find a good person, like someone who has everything that you want. You're very clear on how you want to be treated, all of that stuff. You've done the work, you've gotten very clear, but you're still not putting yourself out there, right? That's that self-sabotage. That's the trauma seeping in. That's the limitation saying, oh, what if they don't exist? Oh, what if I do find them? And that's that, some people, they have some confusion around like who's afraid of success, but we get afraid of success sometimes because we don't know what's going to happen if we become successful, right? It's really the fear of the unknown. So it's like, but there's some validity in some of our fears too, and it's really good to address them. So like the fear with the relationship goal is, what if I meet the perfect person and I fall in love and I get my heart broken, right? What if they reject me? Or what if something bad happens to them? They get sick, right? Like, I don't know. Anything can happen. We don't know what's going to happen. And sometimes our biggest goals are going to come with the scariest fears, and we have to address them, and we have to be realistic, and we have to get to a point. Because some of these fears, there's no necessarily overcoming them. There's just accepting them. It's like, if you want ultimate love, you have to prepare for the possibility of ultimate heartbreak. And that's just the reality of it. And
That's
so, yeah, go ahead.
But I think it's like, I was not always a musician or a podcaster that would talk to people or get in front of people. I'm a keyboardist, so I wasn't in front. The thing that happened to me was I got cancer when I was 27, and I survived it. I'm 55. And that crucible moment made me kind of look like, if I can beat that, I can beat my fear of being in the lead. So then I started singing, and I started podcasting. I started putting myself out there where I had been scared of doing that. And then I wasn't scared anymore. In fact, I lived in Japan for 2 years, and I never would have done that.
Right.
And so I think what has to happen is you have to face those things that you were scared of doing.
Right.
And ask yourself, like, why not? When you're a creative person, anytime you put your work out there, somebody's not going to like it. Right. And so the idea that, well, I can't put it out there because it doesn't match this, or it's not as good as that. You have to believe that it's good enough to present.
Right. And I had a similar setback when I first started, like putting myself out there with like, oh, well, what if people don't like it? Or like, what if they don't engage? Or what if they say I'm crazy? Like, what if something wrong happens? And so I had, like, what helped is, again, I had to assess, how true is this? It's very possible that I'm going to put stuff out there that people don't resonate with. Very possible. And I had to accept that. And I had to get to a place where it's like, what do I care more about? Do I care more about my truth and my message and what I've learned and my wisdom and my gifts and what I believe matters the most, and finding the ones who do resonate with it, no matter how long that takes or what that looks like? Or do I care about the person that I'm never probably going to meet or see or spend any time with or really acknowledge for more than 2 seconds when they make a comment or whatever, right? Like, what do I care more about? Do I care about the rejection, the 2 seconds of rejection? Because what happens when we're rejected? They say no and you never see them again, right?
Yeah.
So, but what happens when you find...
It's like,
but what happens when you find the one that resonates with you? You impact their life forever.
Yeah, I mean, I think what happens, like, if the way I look at it is like, when you're working on something, right, as an artist, we could have like 100 demos, and it's like demo 101 is the one that works. Now, did all those 100 things fail, or were they steps on the ladder to where you made the success? And so a lot of times you have to accept that most of the output you create doesn't connect, right? It happens like but it's still not, it's still worthwhile. And that's why I try to get into the thing is like, when you're working on things in a creative space, or you're working on as a manager, or you're working in business, your first business might fail. Does that mean you don't do it? A product might not work and other products did. You take those things and you learn from them and you move on from them, and they can hurt personally, because you could have thought that product X was the best thing on the planet, but the customers
Right.
didn't. And then you have to kind of learn to let go of that pain from that step and
Right.
realize it's all part of the holistic process that not everything's going to work. You want it to work, but there's not a problem in going through that journey. I think that journey
Right.
is actually part of the whole existence. That's what we have to deal with.
Right. And I'm glad you said that, because that actually kind of segues into what the one of the final kind of tools that really helps with the soul aligned self discipline. Number one, what helped, again, part of it is like I went into my career change and like my goals with this pretty realistic idea that there's going to be trial and error. I'm going to make mistakes. I'm going to not know, like I'm going to be a mess before I become a master, right? And I will say, like, what helped me understand that and be genuinely okay with that is my connection to like my spirit team, my spirit guides, the universe, higher powers, my higher self. That for me, whatever that is for you, it's like God, universe, source, higher self. It doesn't matter. Just something that it's the magic outside of you, and it's just something that can validate you and in a way where it's like you're gonna get it wrong, but you're still loved. You're gonna and it's that like, oh, I'm protected, right? Like I'm protected. I still belong here. Like, to be okay with triggering people because they don't resonate, right? Maybe it's what they needed to hear.
Mhm.
Be okay with, you're gonna put things out there. No one's gonna buy it, right? Like the first time, right? You might have to redo the marketing, rerun the ad. It doesn't matter. I don't know what it is, but this is also my second business. So I didn't do a career transition from like a typical 9 to 5 to an entrepreneur. I just straight up, like, I have always been an entrepreneur, like, because I'm pretty young. And so I opened up my first business at 20 years old as a salon owner. So like straight out of college, basically. And I wasn't real, like it was a trade college, but like I got my license and then but basically not very long, I worked under somebody. And then I was like, you guys, I don't want this. Like, I want to make my own rules, my own schedule. So then I just went out and I started paying a booth rent. And then not long after that, I got offered an opportunity for a space, like a whole space that would just be my own to rent. And I just like was moving really fast because I knew what I wanted. And I
Mhm.
also didn't really have a plan for how I was going to get there necessarily, right? Like I didn't know everything. I just knew what I wanted. I kept telling the universe this is what I wanted. And it just presented itself to me. It was the law of attraction in action. It worked. It was like it took me 3 years, right? Because I graduated at 17. And then in that 3 year process was when I was kind of like, I want my own thing. And then I got it. And then I had that career for 3 years. So that was very successful. And then what happened, not similar to your trauma with the cancer that woke you up, but I had a trauma myself that woke me up. So my dad died unexpectedly right after I opened my salon. And at the time, I didn't have a connection to like the universe or a higher power. I just thought I was kind of getting lucky, but I didn't even understand the law of attraction at that time or anything like that. But that now in hindsight, I see that's exactly what was happening. I was just like, I know what I want. I'm going to get it. And I am willing to show up every day until it's mine. Right. And now I
Mhm.
kind of have seen the process of that, and I've put the pieces together so that I can consistently execute it and with whatever I want. Right. So, but I had that trauma, and then like different things started to crumble. And I basically was faced with a choice, like you were saying. What happened is I decided to live, right? Like after that, I was super depressed. I was like really suicidal because my dad died. I had a child. I was in postpartum depression, and then my marriage crumbled. And I was basically alone besides my less than 1 year old at the time. And I was I wasn't like actively trying to like do anything, right? Like I wasn't like attempting anything, but my lifestyle was killing me. I was
Mhm.
extremely stressed. I was trying to numb the pain with relationships or marijuana or anything. And so I wasn't a present mom. And then there was all this guilt, right? Like I was like, I don't even want to be with my daughter because she reminds me of my dad. She reminds me of my marriage, right? She reminds me of everything, but I love her. She's the only thing I have. So there's all this guilt and just all these emotions that were really taking me down, and my body started to shut down. And I'm very now today in tune with my chakras and stuff. And before, though, I didn't really understand what chakras were, but my throat chakra was shutting down. I couldn't speak properly. My heart was shutting down. It was palpitating. My physical body was starting to manifest into something scary. Like I was really afraid, and something in my head, like I heard a voice or I heard a message. I don't know what it was, but it scared me because it was the first time I'd really ever felt that kind of message or that kind of energy. And it was like, you've got a choice right now. You can let your daughter watch you die, or you can let her watch you get up and heal and change everything. And I was like, and it's something in it just made me was like, I don't want to die, but I wasn't happy. So the way I was living, I didn't necessarily do it on purpose, but I was killing myself because I was so unhappy. And it took that, like my body shutting down and then me kind of questioning, like, well, why do I feel this way? And then I got that answer. It was like, you've got to heal. Like you've got to do something. You've got to change. So then that started my trauma healing journey, and which, like I said, evolved over the years to where it is today.
I think the cancer story, yeah. I mean, the cancer story with me was like I'm 27, yet the mindset is like you're gonna live forever, and then you get a level 3 sarcoma. It's like that's like close to not making it. And then when you survive that, you start like looking at, once as a cancer survivor, what happened is things that I might have gotten depressed, I might have been kind of scared of things, but when you win like that, what happened to me was is like, wow, that's a big win. I understood mortality. I almost didn't make it, and then you start making decisions of like being more affirmative, believing in the manifestation. So it's like if I actually take all this music I was scared to present and present it, opportunities will happen. I knew I was like, I'm just going to go and do it. And, that's how I got out here. And, I've been able to monetize and be able to, have some independence and be able to present in ways that I would have never thought at age 25. I was scared of everything. I would never do, I wouldn't even be on the mic. And so the idea that you can actually kind of have this manifestation and of your dreams by actualizing those thoughts. And as a musician, everything that's inside and everything that's outside, we believe in like the muse. We believe that there's like this universal thing, and musicians, we can tap into it. And when you tap into it, it kind of goes inside and outside all at the same time, and you're connected, and you have this really good feeling. It's cathartic when you're in the process of that creation, and that creation builds its own pathways to actualizing and manifesting your success, because the more you get confident that you can be on that stage and you have a right to be there, you have a right to do that, it gives you a more positive outlook. And I think it just you can take it like I do another business. I'm a software designer as a consultant, and I've taken my creativity with music and kind of pushed it into that world. And I can kind of merge both sides of my brain, the left and right. And I find that my art informs my logical work, and my logical work informs my art. And so once you can kind of be at peace with the left and right, and the inside and the outside, you start to find the balance where you might have been out of balance. And I think that's probably what you're talking about with this kind of holistic healing is like, however you find a life coach or a mentor, if you're in that space where you don't feel right, however your journey is like however you find it, I think that's where people have to start to realize that maybe they have the issue and they need to find a mentor like yourself to challenge it.
No, and I agree with that, because I mean, even me as a mentor, I have my own mentors, and I feel as if I always will. I mean, maybe not, but I enjoy having mentors because I want to still growing. Like even though like I know I have like the capabilities to help others grow, the only way I'm going to be able to continue that is if I keep growing myself, and if I
Hmm.
keep learning, if I keep expanding, if I keep practicing, if I keep becoming better and better and better. And what that's done for me actually is be able to not only find ideal clients, but they stay with me. They just stay because it somehow magically every single time they're ready to accomplish something else, it's what I was doing months prior.
Hmm.
And I'm not doing it on purpose. I have no idea that that's what they're going to want next. You know what I mean? But for some reason, the universe is
Yeah.
just guiding me. It's just showing me the way. And then, like I said, conveniently enough, and I don't really believe in coincidences, right? Like it was meant to be that way. A few months go by and like we're here now. It's like time to like talk about like, well, where do you want to go next? And it's like, well, I have what you need, and it's just a beautiful thing to not only, and I think that that's true for any business owner, right? Like if you've got clientele, you want to stay in the know of like the latest things or the tools and the know-how, because otherwise people will go somewhere
Yeah.
else
You
eventually.
got to be
Right.
in touch. That's kind of
Right.
like where podcasting, people maybe used to do an infomercial or a TV commercial, but now there's like this two-way. And I was talking to another person before. It is the idea with these kind of platforms, and the idea with like dealing with a therapist. And I've talked to therapists to have therapists and analysts to have analysts, because like you need to still be like, balanced, and like you can get out of balance if you think you're never like all. To me, you're always growing. There's always something
Right.
happening. And so you're never fully, like, people say, well, no, when am I going to get fixed? Well, you probably, it's a work in progress, right? So
I
that
love that
means,
you say that. I love that
yeah.
you say
So
that because one of the things I talk about a lot, and I don't sugarcoat this, especially when I'm like consulting with someone or just in my content in general, I do not ever sugarcoat this. Success is not final. Success is not final. Just because you hit a goal or reach a mark, guess what? Now you got to maintain it. Guess what? Now there's a new goal. As long as you are alive, you are going to face challenges, hard times, bad days, stress, and you're also going to have goals that you want to achieve, because that's just how it is. So the main thing that I focus on with someone is getting to a place of like genuine understanding and acceptance of the journey, right? Because that is going to be the key to manifesting everything you want at the quickest rate possible. Because sometimes it's not, you're not meant to manifest what you want in 5 days. You know what I mean? It's just
yeah,
not,
yeah,
it's not applicable. Like it's not the best way
yeah.
to
It's like
manifest
management by
millions by
deadline.
Monday.
Well, it's like management by
Right.
deadline. I'm a software guy, right? I can have a manager say they want something in 2 weeks, but it is the universe says, like, that 2 weeks might not be what it takes to actually design it,
Right.
because it's a thought process, a creative process. We're creating things that didn't exist, and you
Right.
can want it in 2 weeks, but it might take longer than that, because you can't foresee the technical limitations. And so, just because you don't hit the goal doesn't mean that we can iteratively get there.
Right.
We go 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, 1.4. It's not like we threw it away, and not like we're not getting there. But like the idea is like it's not all over just because we're at 1.7 instead of 2.0. We're
Right.
we're still working toward it, and there's
And
things
then
that
once
we
you get to
learn.
2.0, I guarantee you're going to find something you want to improve.
Yeah, we keep on going. We never stop. I mean, the whole
Never
thing with our
stops.
design is it never stops, right?
Right.
Our modern design, it anticipates that we're going to do continual improvement until we change the whole infrastructure. So the thing's going to continually get updated all the time, because it's stuff that we don't
Right.
know. And so
Right.
what we don't know, we don't worry about. We know
Right.
we will fix it, or we will handle it. And so
And
we
I
we-
think,
that,
yeah, I think that's
yeah,
what you're talking. I think what you're talking about is what I was saying is just genuinely being excited for the fact that it's a journey. It's just life. It's a journey. You get to make it however you want it. And then, the key, like I said, one of the main things that I do is contentment with the process, right? Not only trusting the process, not only having that deep connection with yourself and like higher powers to be able to fully just trust and just be in flow. You know, you called it muse, but I kind of call it, I call it flow, right?
Yeah,
So
it's the
like
same
to just
thing. Yeah.
fully, yeah, to just be in that magic, right? That's just like pouring through you. That's the trust, right? And then the second ingredient or the second part to that, from what I know to be true, is contentment with where you're at. Just like knowing that you're meant for more and knowing that you've got a plan and knowing that you're going to do X, Y, and Z every day to get there, like realistically, what you're going to do to get there, but enjoying today, enjoying where you're at today. Because I'll tell you, if you don't have that key ingredient, what are you going to do? You're going to obsess over the future getting here, and you're going to miss out on everything around you. And then another thing too, if you're obsessed with where you want to be, to the like, you can have a healthy obsession, like you can be excited about it, that's one thing, but there's a line where it
Yeah.
becomes desperation to get there. And that desperation doesn't speak well to the law of attraction. That desperation, what that reads as is, I don't have this. I am not happy. I do not have this. I am stressed. I am frustrated. What the heck, man? Why, why am I not where I want to be? I'm not where I want to be. I don't have what I want. That's what the universe, that's what the law of attraction is going to hear when it's that desperation energy, when it's like you're trying to force it, right? You're like so stressed. You're trying to like hold it on. You're holding on to it so tight, and it's just got to happen or you're not going to be happy.
You're
We
more
got to
likely
slow
to
down.
lose it.
We got to step back. And
Yeah.
we've got to figure out, like, why are you a little bit closer to where you want to be than you might be giving yourself credit for, number one, right? Because that's another thing that I find. And it's so interesting. People are like, oh, I want to be wealthy. I want this. I want that. And I'm like, all right, well, let's just take a step back.
Yeah.
Why are you already wealthy? Do you have shoes on your feet? Do you have water to drink? Do you have food to eat 3 times a day or more? Do you have appliances? Do you have a
Well,
roof over
sometimes
your
you
head?
probably
And then,
want to ask them is like, what is it they want to do with that $1 billion? And
right,
if you actually broke it down to like what you think when you have $1 billion, you think that's going to bring you happiness. But there are tons of billionaires that are not happy. So the
right,
question to me is, what do you think is actually going to make you happy? Is having a safe place to be, to be respected,
right,
to be adored, to be able
right.
to be comfortable. That might not cost. You might not need $1 billion for that,
Yeah, you might,
right? So
right, exactly. If you just want to feel safe and secure, you can do that right now. I get people want financial security. And what I find though is most of the time it's pretty, I get that there's, homeless people or people that are genuinely lacking, but when I cross people who are freaking out about financial stability, what I find is they are financially stable, but they are just so afraid of not being, that they're not seeing it, and they're running
not
through
enjoying
their
it.
money. They're not
Not,
holding on to their money. They're literally throwing it away because they're always like telling themselves they don't have it.
yeah. Well, that's kind of a problem with conspicuous consumption, and then trying to keep up with, like what I find in the arts, right? I try to get people to be their authentic self as a producer. An
Right.
artist comes to me, and then they might want to try to clone something they think is working that's somebody
Right.
else, and
Right.
I'm more interested in the demo they gave to me that shows me something I've never heard. And I
Right.
said, I'd rather work on the individual artist that is on this demo and make everything sound better, make the drums sound better, make the voice sound better, and not try to make you sound like Taylor Swift or not
Right.
make you try to sound like Beyonce.
And
I
that I
like
talk
the way you
right.
sound, and let's make it sound better, and make you believe in what you already have.
Exactly. I talk a lot about that too in different things and content, but like what's going to make, cuz I work with a lot of entrepreneurs. So, what's going to make you stand out as a business, right? Like I've got people who own CBD shops. I've got branding LLC project managers. I've got coaches. I've got different types of clients. And what's going to make them stand out is where they came from, what their story is, what their adversities were. Like for you, I get it. Yours is in the voice or it's in the techniques, right? Like for me, it's still the same. It's just it's a different perspective of the authenticity, right? It's the way it's being expressed through for my version, but it's the same thing. And for me, what I've realized, what I know to be true is, again, it goes back to what you were kind of saying, is like balance. And for me, like you were talking about logic versus creativity, balancing those. And so for me, I talk a lot about balancing your inner demons and your angels. So kind of going back to that, that part of you that says you can't. And what is that part trying to do? Is it really your enemy, or is it your protector? Just the overly protective mother trying to keep you safe, right?
Yeah,
Like it's
fight or
just trying
flight.
to keep,
Fight or
it's just
flight.
right,
People are scared and they think it's
it,
overprotected.
right.
Overprotection maybe.
And all that is, it's your survival mechanism. You don't want that to go away. You want to get on the same page as it, because guess what? If you are, it's kind of similar to the logic and creativity. If you don't allow those two to intermingle, if you don't allow survival and growth to intermingle, then guess what's going to happen? You're going to throw yourself off the cliff before you've put your parachute on, because you didn't allow survival or logic to guide you.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can't live in the clouds and get where you want to be. Like I know that there are some people who just want to jump, right? But if you don't assess the risk and you don't take calculated precautions, right? And so I talk a lot about the yin and the yang, the light and the dark, the masculine, the feminine, survival and growth, all of that stuff. It has to be one and the same. It has to be on the same page. It is meant, you have both, because you're meant to work with both. They are meant to work together, and they are facing the thing that makes you uncomfortable, facing the thing that you think is holding you back, is what's going to give you your $1 million idea, because you're going to clouds and you're going to be able to go within and figure out what's unique for you. Like I had a client, right? Just like this week. She is like building her program, and she's had it built, but she can't, right? And so she's evolving like her brand and stuff. We've been working on these things, and she was kind of looking at a brand that she had learned from, and because she loved it, right? She loved it, and it was in the same niche as her, so she was looking at that person's brand, and so she had it there for inspiration. And then we talked about, like, we love this fits really well, but there's something for you. Just meditate on it, just do your practices that we talked about, and it'll come to you. I can't, and and I'm very upfront about this too. I'm the mentor, but I'm not doing it for you. I can't. I physically cannot be your muse. I physically cannot be your flow. All I can do is give you little tools and tips to unlock your own flow, right? So I'm sure you might have some exercises for your people that you're like, here, do this. You're going to step into yourself right now. And what happened was, she messaged me all giddy. She was like, oh my God, what do you think about this? And I'm just like, this is gold. I'm like, this is literal gold. Like, it's $1 million. Like, even if it doesn't make her millions, which I don't doubt it will one day, but it was $1 million. It was just hers. It was so authentic. It was so aligned. And it's because she was open to it. She did her little processes, and she didn't have any attachment to recreate what's already out there. She wanted it to be her own. And and she would have only gotten there. We had to do a lot of inner confidence work, and like getting that inner child to spark that light bulb back up to get her here. There was a lot of work behind the scenes to get her to this point of just genuine flow and like super ideas. Like I'm just beyond proud of her. It's just so exciting when stuff like that happens.
Well, we find is like what I like to do with people is have stream of consciousness, kind of what you call is like, when you can kind of just be able to just put the flow in, right? So we just put the recorder on and say, you know what, just come, whatever comes to mind, play it, sing it, put it down for like half hour, just don't try to keep on starting and stopping. Just do a
Right.
stream of consciousness, let your heart and your soul disconnect and get into that flow. And if we
Right.
just record like the half hour, an hour, and then go back and listen to it, you'll find the
There's
gems
something.
because you weren't thinking about it. You kind of like you should trust yourself. If you're a musician, you have all this muscle memory, you have all this capability, your voice is this. Trust your voice, trust your instincts, and allow yourself to kind of have that flow. If you do that stream of
Right.
consciousness flow, what we found in the history of musicians, that kind of stream of consciousness type of recording, tons of hits have come from that, from people
Right.
just like letting go and just letting it, and then the things they tried to overplan tended not to work as good as the things they kind of allowed to just happen. And you got to
Right.
put yourself in the mind frame that it's okay that you didn't plan it, that you kind of just came into it because you really didn't. It's all that playing and practicing you've been doing for the last 5, 10, 15 years that puts you into the ability that trust yourself. Trust yourself to
Right.
be able to flow because human beings are creative and you just maybe you don't understand it, but allow it to happen.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. And yeah, and I mean I'm the same way. Like even today, like when I plan like a talk or a video like a concept for a video, I might, write out some talking points but for the most part, I know that for the video to be the best that it can be, I'm going to need to let that script go and go into a flow, right? Because otherwise I'm going to sound robotic. Otherwise it's going to be too surface level. It's not going to go as deep, right? And I
Hmm.
mean, like, but I had to start there, you know what I mean? Like I had to
Yeah,
start
yeah,
with the scripts and they were okay, but I know that my videos, the ones that are the best, are the ones where it's intuitive and it flows and I'm not thinking about what I'm saying. I'm just saying it. And so sometimes it does take like what I notice is for the first like few minutes of the video, I have to kind of like detach, just kind of meditate and I just turn it on, right? Like I don't wait until I'm in flow to turn it on. I turn it on while I'm getting into flow. And then when I feel it, I just go, and
yeah,
then
yeah.
if I lose it, I take my step back. And I kind of like earlier when I got distracted, I was like, well, I was in flow. Just give me 1 second. And then I just kind of was
Yeah.
like, all right, I'm letting that go. Right. And then it just, you
It's,
just go back into it.
it's like jazz. If you think about a jazz fusion band, what we do is like sometimes we'll have a theme and then we'll go into like a cacophony and then we'll come back to the theme and then we'll go back to the cacophony. There's this whole thing where we can kind of go into this thing where it kind of falls into what seems like it's chaos, but it's kind of like it's that stream of consciousness. It's the fact that we can go into this weird kind of this dissonant sounds and weird things that don't sound quite right, but they actually are that chaotic moment that we're catching as like this is life, that we can actually channel that and then come back to something where we're totally in tune and then we can get out of tune and come back and it kind of represents the moment. Like it's that moment in time that you're creating that work and
Right.
it's kind of like point in time and it can be very beautiful in that you accept that maybe you'll never actually recapture that exactly the same again, but it's
Right.
actually valid to do things like that because it's honest and it's authentic and it's real. And there's people that you watch a jam band like Allman Brothers or something or the Grateful Dead. It's the same kind of concept. Like those
Right.
artists felt better when they were allowed to be free to create in that kind of form. That's what they choose to do.
Right. Right. Yeah. No, I
So it
totally agree.
sounds like you've got the same kind of mindset. But I think yeah, to manifest something, you have to be able to give yourself the permission to do it. And a lot of people sometimes the first step is hard to give yourself permission to actually follow your dreams because
Right.
maybe you had a belief that said you weren't good enough,
Exactly.
right? And then you've got to understand that that's not a truth. That's a belief that somebody told you that maybe a parent or a grandparent or somebody told you you weren't good enough and you you think it's a truth and then eventually you find out well it's not a truth, like your truth is something else.
Right. And what I've learned too, there's two things that I wanted to say. The first thing is, like I was saying earlier, those can be tricky to find sometimes, and you don't want to create a problem that's not a problem, right? Some people, let's say they had a pretty good childhood for the most part. They had a whole family, but like I said, it could be literally something tiny, like your mom was working and you wanted to play and she said, go do something else. And that little child was like, I'm not wanted, you know, right? Because that's what you want. That's what happens when you're a little child. You don't hear, hey, baby, mommy's working. And I hate it because I have to do that to
Hmm.
my child. But I at least I know like one day we're probably going to have to explore those feelings that she misinterpreted as a child. And
Hmm.
that's okay. I've accepted that I'm gonna cause my child trauma, whether it's intentional or not. And
Yeah.
I'm just gonna have to make sure she knows how to emotionally manage what she's interpreted because she's a child and she doesn't understand. And
Mm.
so I don't care if you had the best mom in the freaking world.
Yeah.
You are
Everybody.
probably a little traumatized as a child just because there was misinterpretations, right? And so I'm not saying you have to try to remember all those moments from a childhood, but to be open to the fact that there may have been an experience, even if it was small, that has planted some seeds of doubt or unworthiness. And that's okay. That's all you have to know. You don't have to remember what caused
Mm.
it. You don't have
Yeah.
to dig that up. You just have to know that it's likely there. And then I can't tell you that you're worthy. You're not going to be able to tell somebody that they're worthy. They're not going to believe it. What you have to do is you have to go in and you have to figure out why you believe it.
Yeah.
And
I think
that's what's
yeah, it's the
going
hard thing.
to make the difference.
Well, I've found people that actually, entrepreneurs and business people I've talked to, is like when they got that moment of clarity to realize that they were worthy, that they did feel it, and they were going to do it. And
Right.
everybody gets to that point, however they get to it. And maybe they go through a mentor, they go to a therapist, they go to a counselor, they go to a spiritual advisor. They find a way to get to that point if they haven't been doing it. And I think that's where people have to realize sometimes you can't do everything from the bootstrap without talking to somebody. There's some people that feel like, oh, you should just be able to do that without any interaction because you're an
Right.
individual. And the individual is like, oh, you just gotta tough it out. But it seems like,
Right.
when I've talked to a lot of therapists, like you can't just tough it out without talking to somebody.
Right. Right. And yeah, and I've had mentors where, I mean, they couldn't tell me this because I already knew better, but I would watch them tell other people to like, you just got to fake it till you make it. Ignore that stuff. And I'm like, you're just suppressing all of it. You're really just suppressing it. And they're never going to take action. Like you're wondering why they've been working with you for 6 months or a year, and they are still right where they were when that you got here. Like they're not following your steps. They're not doing the thing. And it's because every time they come to you with their insecurity, you're like, that's not real. Ignore that.
Mm.
I'm like, oh God, I can't. I like as someone who knows better, I'm like,
Mhm.
I'm not in the right space. I need to go somewhere else. you know, I'm like,
Yeah.
can I speak? can I say something?
Yeah, it's hard if you get a mismatch. Like people could
Right,
be going like the first therapist they go to could be somebody that's kind of like, if you're on a diet and you miss step 5, you got to go
right,
back to step 0. Where you
right,
have another person that says, "Well, yeah, I understand you had a misstep. You went and ate a bunch of Twinkies when you're trying to not have carbs and not have sugar. Like now you got to start all over again. Like what if you had somebody that said, well, maybe we you can understand you could have weakness and we can still
right.
recover, right? But you have somebody that said throw the whole thing out, start all over
Yeah,
again, more likely to fail if you're in that kind of mindset that you have to be totally perfect. And I've
right.
always been into this
Exactly.
thing of the perfection. uh, it's nice to have some level of perfection, but I find in art that sometimes the imperfections or the honesty
Or what stands
is
out.
is actually what makes the work. And
Right.
we're living in an age where you have computers can make things perfect, but
I
then it
love
seems
that.
antiseptic, right? Like I'd rather listen to something that was recorded in the 50s or the 60s or the 70s or the 80s, where there's less computers, because you actually hear the errors. And it,
Right.
it's not, and the thing, the errors aren't really errors. They're kind of what we call them are like happy accidents, because they actually, key changes, micro timing changes that aren't on the beat or not in the key, are in tons of famous songs that
Right.
actually make those songs what they
Right.
are. And people like have forgotten that, like, well, you don't have to make it perfect because the computer's telling you it's not the right tempo, it's not the right key,
No,
it's not the right pitch.
I love I love that you said that the imperfections are what make the work. And like I said, because that goes back to what I was saying is like when you embrace your imperfections or what makes you weird or what makes you or like the things you might be a little insecure about or like somebody at school told you like oh you shouldn't act that way, right? When you embrace these parts of yourself, these parts of your personality, that is exactly what's going to make you stand out from the other 700,000 people that are doing the same thing you are. And so,
Yeah.
whether it's art, music, or coaching, or whatever the business is, because guess what? There are at least 700 other versions of it. So, 700,000 versions of it. So, if you
Yeah.
don't stand out, you're not going to, like you might find clients or customers here and there, but it won't be consistent. It won't be, it probably won't be aligned, like you'll, like because they're just trying to get something and you'll bend your boundaries. You won't be enjoying your passion, all the things, right? So the
Yeah.
more you are just embracing your full unapologetic self, the easier it is to be into flow, the easier it is to create, and the easier it is whenever you're just like, because I have to do that. Sometimes like I hate like I'm my own video editor, so it's like if I make mistakes or whatever, but I download the video anyway and I don't notice till afterwards, I'm uploading it. I'm not about to. I am not about to spend any more time trying to make it perfect because it was meant to be that way. Because
Well,
it's
that's
just,
why,
you know what I mean?
yeah.
Like it's just that's just how it is.
Well, I chose to be a live podcaster because
Right.
there's a lot of people in podcasting world. There's a lot of companies that will come and say, well, we'll edit your podcast and make it perfect. But my
Right.
whole thing has been, the appeal of my podcast is it's like an honest, kind of off the cuff conversation. And yeah, if somebody said, or they did whatever the things that these people say they want to edit out and use AI and do all these things. And I'm like, okay, I understand that perfection, but it gets a little too much. Like if you
Right.
just turn my thing into something that's too clean, I don't like it. It's like the same thing with the music. Like I don't want a perfect pitch recording because you took all the artistry out of it. And so
Right.
sometimes having those pitches that are a little off, and somebody can say, "Well, I'm going to fix that." It's like, well, what you're fixing is actually kind of wrecking it. And so you have to understand the authentic nature of just being able to live with the moment. And some people, that
Well, you know
moment
what it
happened, and
does?
that's what it is.
You know what I like about it the most and what I believe it does is it shows other people, oh, hey, they're not perfect. I can do that, right? Like, oh, you can make mistakes. What? Like, oh, like or
Mhm.
like I know there's a song by Sia. I love Sia and like she is a total representation of a lot about like what we're talking about today, I believe, because she embraces like what she wants and she does what she needs to do to make her feel comfortable, not what society needs to feel
Mhm.
comfortable, right?
Mhm.
And I
Yeah.
love that. And she'll let her voice crack, but I don't know. To me, it sends chills. Like I like it.
Yeah.
I like it whenever things like that happen. And I don't even call, but like I'll listen to it with someone else, and they'll call it out as like an imperfection. And I'm like,
Yeah.
she's amazing. You don't ever
It's
say
kinda
that,
like
right?
yeah, it's kinda like back in the '70s, Neil Young had this ability sometimes to have his voice crack or voice kind of pitch crack, and it was kind of his thing. And what happens is the reviewers actually said, that makes him kind of an authentic singer-songwriter that has a lot of emotion. So
Right.
the people in the '70s, they looked at it as like, well, he's being authentic, he's being emotional, he's being willing to bare his heart and his soul, and it was more important to do that than to make it perfect pitch. and
Right.
not to have these kind of cracks or kind of off pitch things. And I think people have kind of lost that today because there's so much music that is perfect that
Right.
then it makes people feel like, well, I got to clone that. And I've always been like, the kind of person, even in my IT work world, is like, don't just clone something that already exists because we're trying to do something
Right.
different. And
Right.
so the idea, like, it's always easier to clone what was successful, but then it's like, why would somebody buy something that already exists,
Yeah. And what
right?
I know to be
Like,
true is you're going to find yourself in yourself, right? You're going to find yourself in yourself and then in what you want to create. So, like, people are like, well, I don't know who I am. And so they're like, well, looking at different things of like, well, what do I enjoy? And I mean, that's part of it, somewhat like figuring out what you like. But at the same time, your likes and opinions are always going to change. Do you like the same things you liked when you were 10 years old? Probably not. Right? So like all of that, that part of your personality is always evolving, but you have certain core aspects of yourself. That is what you want to be connected to because that's what's going to allow you to, like I said, stand out from like with your personality because you're just showing up on unapologetically you. Because I think most people know who Sia is because she's the girl who won't show her face on stage. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Like it's like
yeah,
all
she
that
chose to
stuff.
do
Like
it. Yeah,
she's unapologetically her and she stands out, right? And just different things. There are different brands and there's different people, artists, creators, whatever it is, they stand out among the other 700,000 that are doing the same thing because they're showing up authentically,
yeah,
whatever that means or whatever that looks like. And they're creating from the authenticity, right? You don't wait, you don't try, like your process or your journey is whatever it is. But I'll tell you the thing that you're going to create that's going to become your $1 million creation, whether it makes you $1 million or not, it's going to be your awesome thing.
yeah.
It's going to come from when you're in your most authentic space.
Yeah, it comes from your inner being. What I
Right.
find is like the work I like, the authors I read, the poets I read, it's because they had this individual stamp on their style, like a William Blake or
Right.
Tennyson or Wordsworth. There's a certain style to those poets, and you could try to mirror it, but it's like that's not Wordsworth. That's not Shakespeare. You read it and you say, well, that's his style. That's the way Ernest Hemingway. You read the book and you're like, wow, he has a very unique way of pulling you into the story, and it's his vision. And people have to understand like that you take a risk to put that vision out there because there's people, editors, that will say, well, that doesn't work, and you have to actually stand for what you believe in because there'll be a lot of people that won't allow you to get there until you really just keep on showing up. You keep on
Right.
showing up, and then
Right.
you break through because you had the kind of gumption to say, I should be here and I will be here, and I'll
Right.
find the market and I'll find the place. And if you keep on pushing, you'll find that the way the world is now, you'll find markets if you're willing to put it out there. You just have to have
Right.
that. Don't get scared when they tell you no.
Exactly. Exactly. I love it.
Well, thank you for being on the podcast. We actually hit the hour mark. It comes by really quick. Want to let people know we do have your link up there, holistic healingservice.com. And if the people go there, what do they find?
So if you go to that specific link, it'll take you to my manifesting audit. So I do a free 15-minute little manifestation audit where we talk about what you're trying to manifest, where you kind of are, and what shifts can be made to optimize your process and how you can personally make them. So it's a really quick call, but it's just a good way to kind of get an insight of like what direction you're going in and is there any way you can optimize it. And then like of course if it's something simple, easy, I'm going to help you solve that problem in that 15 minutes. But of course if it's something like I need a little bit more time with this or work, we can talk about those options and give you more resources as well in that moment when we decide okay, we need a little bit more expansion here, right? So that is what that link is going to take you to. But if you go up to the top, it's just on my website. So it's just a page on my website. So it'll take you to my website as well, but you'll land on the page of my website. If you want to just go to the website, just don't put the word contact in there.
Okay.
The contact will bring you
Free
to
form.
booking that little session. And like I said, it's a free session. So it's just, it's kind of a manifesting clarity session, just to make sure, you know, you're on the right track, or how can you optimize it, and then get any additional resources afterwards if you need any. But it mainly takes you to my website, and which will kind of direct you into different ways to connect with me, which the best way to connect with me would be like Facebook. So I have like a private Facebook group, and I am generally pretty personal with the people that I'm connected to on my Facebook page. So my Facebook is just facebook.com/holistic healer Heather. So you can find me on Facebook, and then I'm also on YouTube. But everything like those are the main places that I'm at. But the website should help you find all of that too.
Okay, so if they go to the website, they can get to your Facebook too, and as well.
Possibly. I can't remember, but yeah, if they can find me on Facebook by
Well, I can add that. I can add that Facebook link when we go to publish on the other platforms.
Okay, cool.
So
yeah. Facebook. I don't know if it'll take you to my Facebook, but yeah, it should definitely connect you. But yeah, those two links, website and Facebook, are the best ones.
Okay, well, I want to let people know that will be clickable on the published platforms we're on. Well, almost every platform that podcast can be found, from Spotify to Apple to iHeartRadio, Radio Public, all those platforms. We're going to create a landing page for you, for people to be able to go to whatever platform they watch or listen to a podcast. That will be available tomorrow. But we have been on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch, and I will give you the Facebook and YouTube links right after this. And so your fans will be able to, your audience will be able to have that. The landing page will be available tomorrow. But thank you again for being on the podcast. Just hang a bit when we go off, because we have to get that last copy. But thank you again for being on the podcast tonight. Have a good night.
Awesome. Yes, thank you.